Brothers and sisters, welcome back to the Behaviour Revolution Scriptures. My name is Mark, and today we're going to talk about Yisrael, or Yaakov's, conniving firstborn son, Reuben, and what he gets up to while his father is away burying Yitzchak. It's been an amazing journey seeing the life of Abraham and what testing and trials he went through to become favoured by Yahusha, to be trustworthy by Yahusha. Also Yitzchak, and now Yaakov, seeing the crucible of fire that he's gone through to become useful to Yahusha. None of us are useful to Yahusha without being trained first. You can't just get immersed and suddenly have everything click, 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 I'm ready to go into battle. No, you've got to be trained for years to have the world purged out of us. Yahusha cuts us and severs us, and as we grow, he cuts some more, and it's painful. He severs us, pulls us out from the world. We come out from among all of it. And Yaakov had to be separated from everything that he was and knew and loved, and who he thought he was as well, just as we have to be. So we're going to finish off a few different threads today, because in our next episode we're going to be talking about opening up another big journey with the life of Yusuf. But we're going to finish up just a short episode today because I've got to get back to work, guys. We're going to talk about the birth of Benjamin. This was Yaakov's last son. After leaving Beital Yisrael, Yaakov had almost arrived in Ephrath when Rachel went into labor. Her pain was intense and she had great difficulty giving birth. But after her excruciating delivery, her midwife said to her, "Don't worry, dear, it's another beautiful boy for you." But as her pain increased and the life was slowly draining from her, Rachel named her new son Ben-Oni, which means son of my sorrow, with her last dying breath. A little later, Yisrael, Yaakov, altered his name to Benjamin, son of my right hand. So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, which is actually Bethlehem. And Yisrael built a stone column over her grave and mourned for his darling sweetheart. And this memorial can still be seen to this day. Then Yisrael and the family kept travelling and pitched their tents beyond the Tower of Eder. And Yisrael went to see his father Yitzchak in Mamre, where his grandfather Abraham had also dwelt. I thought Yitzchak was about to die back when he gave the birthright. He's still alive and kicking 20 years later. And Yitzchak breathed his last and died at the age of 180 years, and was buried by his sons Yaakov and Esau. Wonder if Esau went up to his brother and said, "How come you didn't follow me back then? You said you were coming to my place, and then you buggered off." One can only imagine the dialogue. So this is interesting. Remember, this had only had Abraham and Yitzchak on it for a while there, this little chart. This chart is ever expounding. So now we've gone from having Abraham and Yitzchak, and now we've got Yaakov, whose name was changed to Yisrael, and he had Zilpah, and Zilpah had Gad and Asher. So Yisrael had two sons with Zilpah, the servant wife. Then he had Then he had all these children: Reuben, Shimeon, Lewi, Yehuda, Yishakar, Zebulon. With Leah, he had two sons, with Bilhah, the other maidservant, Dan and Naphtali. And with Rachel, his favourite wife, he had Yusuf and Benjamin. So this little family here was what he initially wanted. He wanted to marry Rachel and have a family with her, didn't he? And in the process of having his favourite wife and two of his favourite sons, he had this whole big family in the process, and there was Dinah as well, the daughter. So this big family of his. And all these children now had, most of them, not Yusuf and not Benjamin, had families of their own as well. So this is the lineage of the eternal blood covenant made with Abraham through Yitzchak and Yaakov, the 12 tribes of Yisrael. So these 12 tribes here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. These were the 12 tribes of Yisrael. Got that? So that's why we've gone through these stories to see where they all came from. Some were Leah's kids, some were Zilpah's kids, some were Bilhah's kids. Reuben was the oldest child. He was the firstborn. Keep that in your mind as we go on, because he's going to do some pretty depraved stuff. Reuben's depraved firstborn heist. He's going to try and take the firstborn. One day while Yisrael was still burying his father, Reuben, his oldest son, saw the nakedness of his father's servant wife Bilhah while she was bathing in a private place. And his loins burned for her. And he thought to himself, my father's favourite wife Rachel is dead, so I will defile her maidservant Bilhah too, and let my mother Leah finally be my father's favourite. And then I will inherit a double portion of everything. See his thought process? Rachel, who was the favourite wife, is now dead. And so if I get rid of Rachel's servant wife as being favoured as well, because my father won't favour her if she's been defiled, if I sleep with her, then Leah will be the favourite, and so will her sons, apparently. So he'll get a double portion of everything, because that was the birthright and blessing, remember? Remember when we talked about Yaakov and Esau, the birthright and the blessing? He thought if he did all this, he could get a double portion. And that night, Reuben looked into Bilhah's tent and saw her asleep with her nakedness exposed, for she had drunk too much wine. And he crept in and had sex with her while she slept, defiling her and making sure she could not be his father's choice wife, making sure she couldn't be his father's favourite wife. And when Yisrael returned home from burying his father, Reuben made sure his father found out exactly what he'd done in order to ensure his future blessings. Sorry about the typos, guys. There's a few in here, isn't there? That should be Reuben with an A. Things have been changed. Servant wives / concubines were inherited from father to firstborn son after the father's death. So not only would you get the father's wealth, but you get the father's possessions as well, including his wives and servant wives. So servant wives and concubines were inherited from father to firstborn son after the father's death. But Reuben was acting shrewdly to ensure the safety of his birthright blessing by sleeping with his father's servant wife before his father had even died. He's getting a leg up right away. I'm going to deal with this right now before my father dies. And Yisrael let his son Reuben have his wickedness. Didn't do anything about it. Scripture doesn't say he did anything about it for a while. And didn't punish him for the time being, nor did he sleep with his servant wife Bilhah again. So it worked. He defiled his servant wife, and Yaakov did not go near her. Yaakov did not go near her again in that way. And Yahusha struck, this is interesting, Yahusha struck Reuben with sores on his groin area for 7 months, a grievous affliction which would have killed him if Yisrael didn't intervene and pray over him. So Yisrael hadn't intervened and prayed over him, he would have died. That was how bad the infection was. And even after the sores cleared up, Reuben lived the next 7 years ones that led the bloodbath, Shimeon and Louis, and this son had just slept with his servant wife. So these conniving three were kind of out of the picture. They weren't going to get much from him. He was fed up with them. So it looks like he was going to favour Yusuf by the look of it, don't you think so? So that's why Reuben's trying to get a foot up on this inheritance thing. I've got to work for it, because it's going to go to someone else. Look at me and my brothers. We're not getting much favour at all. Wasn't their fault, of course, though, was it? Wouldn't look at themselves. So then we have this little chart here, which is really just the descendants of Esau and Jacob. We know the descendants. You can go through this in your own time, guys. This is really just to replace the lineages. Wherever there's lineages and such beget such and such beget such and such beget such and such, I put it into charts so that you can just see it a bit better. But it does show you where the Egyptians came from later on. So you've got the descendants of Esau down here. This is generations and generations later. Beginning the pharaohs of the oppression, married him, Esau became the Edomites. Esau became the Edomites. Esau dwelt on Mount Seir. Intermarriages took place between sons and daughters of Esau. That's right. And we see here, this was the Pharaoh during the deliverance of the children of Israel from slavery. So there's all this stuff that aligns with history. Origin of the Amalekites were mentioned later on in scripture. This is the family tree of Esau, whose descendants eventually became the oppressors of Israel. So Esau, Jacob's brother, eventually his descendants became the oppressors of Israel, the Egyptians. So that's enough for this episode, guys. It's just a really short one today. Next episode we're going into Yusuf and his royal tunic and his favour, and that's a blowout, this story, and what Yahusha does in this situation, because Yusuf is just like Yitzhak was a type of Yahusha, model type person, shadow. So is Yusuf, and what Yusuf goes through, Yahusha went through, and we are going to go through also. So stay strong, brothers and sisters. I hope you're enjoying these episodes. Yahusha's breathing life into the scriptures, as far as I'm concerned, making them more user-friendly, more understandable. So you can see that the children were just doing what children do, aren't they? What's changed today? What's changed out in the world? They're all fighting over money and trying to take each other's wives and take each other to court and get stuff from one another, and it's all filthy madness out in the world, and it's just happening here. We can relate to these stories because we see it happening all around us. But in the midst of all that, Yahusha is doing something with his bride. Yahusha is training his bride to be ready, just like Yahusha was training his people back here, filling them with all these ideas of blood covenant and deliverance and being cleansed by water and circumcision and bread and blood and all these sort of things. To wash their minds clean so that when he came along they'd be ready. They weren't. They didn't even know who he was. So he had to choose fresh people again to work with, his emissaries. So today he's doing the same thing. He's already chosen his bride. We don't have to go out and find her. So we just work with who he tells us to work with our own families, work at our jobs. He will bless the work of our hands. Work, tarry on work. Work, tarry on work until he comes back. So keep tarrying on, brothers and sisters. Stay strong. And I'll see you next episode. It's very exciting where we're going with this. Love you. So be it.